All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Persian and the Cowboy podcast. As always, he's the Persian, I'm the Cowboy. And today we're going to be talking about the Maine shooting that is going on right now. I believe it's an active investigation, really tragic stuff out there. I'm not too familiar with the details of what has happened right now. So, Mr. Persian, can you please give us a synopsis of the facts as you know them?
Yeah, so unfortunately, Cowboy, this past Wednesday, just 2 days ago, there was a mass shooting, another mass shooting, this time in Lewiston, Maine, in the eastern part of the United States, in the East Coast. A deranged gunman entered a bowling alley and shot multiple people, killing multiple people and maiming several others, and then also went to another location at a restaurant, bar, and grill and did the same thing. And unfortunately, the gunman, they have not been able to find him. He's on the loose. That part of Maine, Portland, Maine, Lewiston, Maine, some of the smaller towns like Auburn, Maine, are all shut down. It's a shelter-in-order kind of situation. Everybody's in their house. There's police, state troopers all over the place looking for this gunman. They don't know his whereabouts. They think that he's gone into the woods and he's hiding. Apparently this guy's name is Robert Card. He's about 40 years old. He is a former, apparently he's still in the U.S. Army Reserves. He was an expert marksman. He's a firearms instructor. So this guy has tactical training. He knows what he's doing. And he's gone into the forest, they believe, so they're trying to track him down. They're hoping that he killed himself, but they're not able to find his body or anything like that. So he may be still on the loose. He's definitely armed and dangerous. And they're telling people, please shelter in order. The whole town is suspended. Schools are shut down. People are in their homes, hiding it out. It's an active situation, active investigation. And our thoughts and prayers go out to everybody that was killed. Yes, a lot of innocent people died. A lot of innocent people have been wounded.
Do we know what the totals
changed. The totals keep changing, but 18 killed and over 13 wounded. At first, they were saying 22 killed and 60 injured. But the reports have been up and down. They're still identifying the victims as this is an active investigation. Last night, there was apparently a situation where they went to the gunman's house and they thought he was hiding in a she shed in his backyard, and they had surrounded it, but it wasn't him. So apparently there was something strange going on in the backyard, but it wasn't
someone
him.
Else in there? That's
It
bizarre.
wasn't anybody in there, but apparently it was a false alarm.
Interesting.
There's been a lot of leads. A lot of people freaked out, as anybody would be, but you know, it's another dark stain in our country. These mass shootings that happen pretty much on a weekly, bi-weekly basis now. They're just so common. And apparently, the gunman was struggling with severe mental health issues for the past year. He was hospitalized. It was in a mental health institution during the summer for hearing voices in his head. I don't know if he was a paranoid schizophrenic or he's schizophrenic or something was going on. He was hearing voices in his head and he was being medicated, but apparently they let him go from the facility, thinking that he was better. He had some domestic violence charges. He had incidents at work at a recycling plant. He lost his job. He was making threats of shooting a Army Reserve base that he was at. So all the tall tale signs are there. And you know, nothing was done to prevent this man from carrying out the acts that he carried out 2 days ago. Yeah. And my question is this, you know, we have three problems in this country with these mass shootings. Number one, we have a severe mental health crisis in this country. Mental health is a very complex situation. You have multiple diseases within mental health, okay? We do not have the resources to tackle mental health in this country. We do not have good enough laws to protect people from people who have these kind of illnesses and diseases. You know, because many mass shootings that happen, the report comes out, oh, this person was struggling with depression, with anxiety, with personality disorder, schizophrenia, hearing voices in their head, and they were never institutionalized, never medicated. The families kept this under wraps, did not, you know, seek help for their loved one. So, you know, you have a big mental health crisis in this country. You don't have the resources. You don't have the right medications. You don't have the right protocols to put something like this in an institution, number one. Number two, if a person has a mental health problem, as I've stated, whether it's depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, mood disorders, anger problems, why the fuck are these people allowed to have high-powered guns in their homes, knowing that they have these issues, and this individual had committed domestic violence acts against his spouse. I mean, this is a tall tale sign. And the other part is he's making threats at his work place of employment.
Yeah.
Whether it was at his workplace or at his Army Reserve base. The threats were there. So why are his weapons not taken away from him? And why is he not in jail or in a mental health institution? Third thing is, the families of people who suffer from mental health, if you see that your loved one is a threat to himself, to you, or to the general public, you have to get help for your loved one. You have to call the authorities. You have to call the hospital to institutionalize these people to get help for them. I mean, you have to speak up. Don't hide this. So these mass shootings, the majority of mass shootings can be avoided with the right help for these people. And the reason why these people do it is too late. Mm-hmm. It's too late. They're far gone. So I don't know what to say. The cycle keeps continuing.
Well, the thing that for me is the mental health aspect of it. You know, it's like we clearly have someone that is suffering, as you're saying, is seeing things, hearing voices, you know, completely insane at that point in time. Where are the institutions? Why we used to have insane asylums. We used to have institutions where we can put these people in a place where it's safe for them and safe for the people that are around them, and so they can get the help and medication and support that they need to have right there. But in today's medical world, we are so assembly line in the way we treat people. The doctor's just sitting there across the table waiting to figure out what the right medication is to give you, and they're just going to brush you off on your way after that.
I mean, it baffles my mind. I mean, during the Reagan administration, one of the big mistakes was they cut back on the mental health stuff big time. Like they cut the budgets out of there, they shut down the institutions, they shut down a lot of programs. And they started giving more rights to people with mental health. Like you cannot force somebody to go into an institution. I get that part of the aspect, but at the same time, you have deranged individuals in this country. You have sick people. They have different issues. They have different diseases within mental health. They need help. They need to be institutionalized. You have to. I don't care about any law. You have to force these people to get in an institution, and they have to be in there until they get better. Because they're a threat to not just themselves, to their families, but to innocent civilians that don't even know them. Because it's getting to a point in this country that you can't even go to a movie theater, a school, a bowling alley, a restaurant, a grocery store anymore without looking over your shoulder every 5 seconds. Because it's just so dangerous now. You don't know if someone's going to walk through the joint and put a bunch of bullets in you.
Well, and
it's gotten out of control.
But we have to also think about the perceived danger versus the actual danger that's out there. You know, like yes, these larger shootings seem to be becoming more common, but gun violence as a whole has been going down over the last 30 years. I haven't looked at the numbers in the last couple of years after COVID and the relaxation of the police forces and the defund the police movement that happened.
Horrible movement, by the way.
Yeah, so
don't defund them. Give them more money.
Give them more money, more training. You know, they should spend a quarter of their time just training. Like that sounds good to me. But anyways, that's kind of on the side point right there. I haven't seen what the numbers have done in the last couple of years, but the overall trend in the last 30 years is gun violence has gone way.
I've heard those
down.
Studies too that it's gone down.
But we do have these larger tend to be mental health breaks where someone just snaps and goes insane and then starts going crazy like that. The media is going to jump all over that and throw it in.
It's for ratings. They love
Yeah.
this shit, and that's the sick part. That's disgusting.
Exactly, especially for those that are flaunting the take their guns. Why do you need guns? Kind of thing. Let's just get rid of all the guns and everything will be better. You know.
And that's the thing with the media. And you brought up a great point, Cowboy. It's not just a gun problem. The main problem is the mental health.
Yeah, it's the guy pulling the trigger. It's
the guy pulling the trigger. The gun is not pulling the trigger on somebody.
No.
But I'm going to say something that you and I may differ, and that's fine. That's the point of this program, to have different opinions. But the mental health problem in this country is gotten out of control. We have to tackle this. We have to put more investment, more money into better research of medications, reopen the institutions. Don't make it inhumane. Make it a humane place for someone to get better, like a rehab institution, but to give them the tools needed, the right medications, the right therapies, the right processes. There's a lot of people, if they go through these processes, they're going to feel a lot better, and they will be not healed, because mental illness will always be with you, but it's going to be stable, like a diabetic on medication. It's like that. You're going to have to take medication for the rest of your life, and that's fine. Some people need it. They have that kind of imbalance that they have to get some sort of medication. So it really comes down to, what justifies institutionalizing somebody. Somebody that's non-coherent, somebody that's hearing voices, someone that's making threats, somebody that's planning something. I mean, these are the folks that have to be institutionalized and taken care of and to get better. Because with the right medications, the right therapies, and the right procedures, they're going to get better. And we can avoid the majority of these mass shootings. Now, the other part is with the guns, I will say, Cowboy, that, the Second Amendment is there. It's a part of our Constitution. It's a part of our history. And this will never go away. But you can reform the Second Amendment to a point where if somebody who has a domestic violence situation, who's committed crimes, who has domestic violence or other crimes or other violent crimes, they should have their guns taken away from them. Period. And with regard to that, if somebody has committed a crime, a violent act, okay, they cannot have weapons in their possession and a lot of ammunition in their possession. You have to take that away from them. And for instance, if someone's buying ammunition, right? Why is someone buying thousands of rounds of ammunition? I don't think that's necessary. You can buy ammunition, but thousands of rounds? Are we waiting for China to fucking paratroop down? Are we waiting for someone to come knocking on our door?
Yeah, that's actually exactly the reason to.
I know, but China's not going to invade the United States.
Because we have thousands of rounds of ammunition. There's a gun behind every blade of grass. That's why no one's going to invade the United States. Because
exactly, but at the same time, but at the same time, it's not necessary for someone to buy thousands of rounds of ammunition.
But I mean, how often is someone okay?
It should be kept. Look at Israel. Let me give you a suggestion. Look at Israel, right? Israel, people are allowed to have firearms in their house. That's fine. And I'm not saying take all the guns away. I'm just saying there are certain guns that shouldn't be in the possession of people that are, if there's a police officer or a military person that's active, whatever, they can have the guns. But there's certain high-powered assault rifles, things of that nature. They shouldn't be in the hands of an ordinary citizen that has had no training on it, and they can just buy it from in some random state. Oh, I got it or whatever, and then they can buy thousands of rounds of ammunition. It shouldn't be in their hands. It shouldn't be in their possession. It's not necessary. In my opinion, it's not necessary. If you want to have a gun, that's fine. If you have multiple guns, that's fine. But there should be a cap on the amount of ammunition you can buy. And it's a red flag if you're buying thousands of rounds of ammunition. That's a red flag to me.
But how often in a mass shooting has thousands of rounds of ammunition been spent? I can think of one example.
Give me your example, and I'll give you my example.
The Las Vegas shooting.
That's a red flag.
Well, that guy... there's still a lot of fishy things to be answered about that shit.
Well, I honestly think that was a domestic terrorist attack.
I almost went there. I had friends that went to that concert.
Well, thank God you didn't.
I didn't go there. Yeah,
thank God you didn't go.
Bailed at the last minute, but
your friends were okay.
Yeah, they're okay.
Yes,
yeah,
that's
little traumatized.
Yeah,
but,
But to me, for instance,
I mean, so you buy 10,000 rounds of ammunition. Do you know how much 10,000 rounds of ammunition weighs?
How much does that weigh?
I mean, it's more than one person can carry by themselves,
Yeah, but they buy it in phases. They don't buy it all at once, but they buy it in phases.
Yeah.
But if somebody...
But if you're going to go off and do a mass shooting, you're not going out with 1,000 rounds of ammunition.
You're going to go with quite a few hundred. But, for instance, the guy that did this mass shooting in San Jose, in our hometown.
Yeah.
Same tall tale signs. Guy had a violent personality, had several domestic violence incidents, was making threats at work. And yet, this guy wasn't immediately let go. They had to think about it. And the day they were going to let him go, he showed up and took a bunch of people down.
Is it the BART station, or was that
the
uni?
VTA?
VTA, that's
VTA.
Right.
So my thing is, they went to his house. They found thousands of rounds of ammunition at his house, bomb-making material. Like, dude, is it not a red flag that somebody with these convictions is buying all these guns and all this ammunition? Like, it is a red flag to me, and it should be investigated.
I think you're underestimating how many people buy thousands of rounds of ammunition.
I think there's a lot of people.
I think you're underestimating how many people in the United States own thousands and thousands of rounds of ammunition, of different types of ammunition. It's not the ammo that's doing this. It's the person behind the gun.
It's always the person behind it.
And to your previous point of like, if they commit a felony, we should take their guns. I'm pretty sure. I think there's laws in place that I go along with that line of thinking.
Well, I think it goes state to state, but in this situation that happened in Maine, it's documented. This guy has 3 incidents of domestic violence. He was making threats at work.
Yeah, he
lost his job, his actual job. Then in the Army Reserve, he made a threat of shooting up the military base, and yet. This guy, and he was institutionalized once for mental health problems, and yet his guns were not taken away from him. He had a high-powered rifle, went into these 2 institutions, and killed a bunch of people, and yet this could have been avoided if they took his guns away from him.
Yeah, and that's
for the most part.
I would agree that is possible, and I think that it's sad and tragic that the people that know him, the friends, the family members,
they're at fault too.
They are. And they're going to have to live with the fact that they didn't say anything and they didn't speak up when it mattered the most. And I agree that institutionalizing him, bringing back the asylums, the safe places for people suffering from mental health to go for a while to recoup, get the treatment that they need, and not just get pills thrown at them by doctors is the right way of going about it. That does remove them from their guns. The thing I get nervous about is how do we execute the plan of removing someone's guns from themselves?
I'll tell you my plan.
But the classic line is, "Oh, I lost my guns in a boating accident." When Uncle Sam starts knocking at your door, Uncle
Sam's going to take it away regardless.
I know, but so then you're sending in what, the SWAT team?
No,
you're sending in a police officer. I mean, they're going to have to like smoke bomb you out or something like that, knock you out, then break your door down. Well,
here's the deal.
And let me finish my point. Real
you
quick.
Finish your point.
But once a law on the books is like that, like let's say it's like, oh, my friends reported me as being sad, and I'm going through a mental health scare, and they know I have a ton of guns around, and they're worried that maybe it's not as extreme as I'm going to go shoot someone or like go shoot up a town or something like that. Maybe they're just concerned that I'm going to use my guns to harm myself, and my friends are like, oh, you know what, we should go have him take his guns away, let's report it. And then once it's reported like that, then they come, they take your guns, and then they'll be like, we'll give them back eventually. Then all of a sudden there's a law in the books where someone can just report anyone, and then they can get their guns taken away from them. And that's what makes me nervous about it, is how are we going to execute this? How are we going to decide who is mentally sane enough to own guns versus who is not mentally sane enough to get guns? It seems like a very slippery slope between being able to take guns from some people and being able to take guns from anyone the government wants to take guns from.
Well, that's a slippery slope for sure.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you my plan, like what I would do. I think number one, if you've committed any kind of violent crime, domestic violence, assault, and it has to be investigated, because if it's self-defense, then self-defense is self-defense. But if you attack somebody or you beat your wife or spouse or whatever, child abuse, sexual assault, things like that, you can never buy a gun again, and you're going to go on a list on a registry, and you can never do that again. You're flagged. Done. And if you have guns at your house with a search warrant, sheriffs, police, whatever, come to your house, several of them, for backup, whatever, and they confiscate your guns and ammunition or any paraphernalia, things like that. That's it. Number two, if you have a mental illness in this country, and I know this is a controversial statement because I also suffer from mental illness. I've had depression. I've had depression, things of that nature, and I take medication for it, and that's fine. I've been very open about it. People like, who have a mental illness, it depends. I'm not talking about depression, anxiety, but you got anger problem. You got a split, disorder, like a personality disorder, whatever, bipolar disorder. you have to go on some sort of registry. That way, saying that this person has the potential that if they're not medicated on the direction of a doctor, if they're not medicated, if they're not stable, they have the potential. If they have rifles in their possession or assault rifles, whatever, or guns, period, they have the potential to potentially carry out an act of violence. They have to go into a registry, and they're not able to purchase a weapon. I'm sorry. That's like, even somebody like me, I'm not saying that I would ever do anything like this, but depression can be very scary, where somebody could take their own life with a firearm or whatever. They can take their own life jumping off a bridge, but with a firearm, you're taking that option away from them and away from them from committing an act against others.
Yeah.
So this has to be a law where if you suffer from some sort of mental illness, you cannot buy a firearm, ammunition, or any type of gun. That's gone. I know people are going to say, well, you're taking my freedom away, but you're protecting other people in the long term and that person themselves.
Well, you know what? Who was it that said it? If you're willing to sacrifice freedom for protection, then you do not deserve freedom in the first place. Something along those lines. Some president said that once upon a time.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, the majority of these mass shootings, these people are suffering from mental illness, and they still have weapons in their hands.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, too, when these mass shootings happen, the other thing is the families of these gunmen should be held accountable with criminal charges, because they have the ability to say to that individual or tell the authorities that my son or daughter is having a mental problem and has weapons in their possession, and they're talking about conducting a mass shooting.
Yeah.
And I need you guys to come arrest them and to take them to an institution to see what's going on.
Yeah, that I completely agree.
You have to speak up, because the mass shooting that took place 2 years ago in Michigan at a Michigan high school, a very deranged teenager, 14, 15-year-old, killed 5 of his classmates. The parents bought their son a gun as a form of bonding to go shooting on the range. And they knew their son had all these mental health problems, wrote disturbing stuff, talked about doing disturbing things. And they brushed it under the rug, didn't take care of the problem, didn't get help for their son. And in the end, he took the gun that he bought with his mom and dad, went to the school and shot a bunch of people. And now those 2 parents are in jail, which is a good thing. They're being held accountable.
Yeah.
And in this case, the family of this gunman in Maine should be held accountable. So you have to hold the family members of these mass shooting suspects. If they're dead, these people are going to pay the price. They're going to be held accountable for their actions. You have to say something. If you see something, speak up. Don't hide it under the rug. Don't hide it because your family's shame. You're going to save lives down the line in the lives of your loved one. So in the end, there needs to be more accountability. There has to be additional laws, severe background checks for people that have these kind of problems. If they've committed a crime, take away their guns. You get the mental health care that they need. There needs to be better mental health care in this country, whether it's better institutions, reopening institutions again, better medications, medication therapy, all this kind of stuff. It's a very complicated issue, because then a lot of people are going to say, well, you're going to take all the guns away. No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying is you have to take it away from certain individuals who are a threat to the community.
Yeah. And then the problem is, who is the decider of who's a threat to the community versus not a threat to the community? And because that's like, I acknowledge the fact that taking the guns out of the hands of people that would do harm with them would be a good thing.
Yeah, good thing.
But it's who's the judge, who's the jury, how do we decide who is or is not? I like your idea of the family members reporting things and being honest and upfront about it. All gun owners should be responsible for the guns that they purchase, especially the parents. And there are many laws on the books that say if your gun goes rogue or something like that, it's on your ass as well. So I'm glad that guy's parents are in jail too. Yeah. Many states, and I'm no expert on the background checks from various states. We live in California. I know California has an extremely rigorous background check on gun purchases, and they also have background checks now on ammunition. So definitely already going that route. Has it made things better in California? I don't know. The other thing, though, is there's also a 7-day waiting period if you purchase a gun, you can't receive it the same day. And that's, I believe, across the entire nation. Everyone has to wait the 7 days. So if they just are in a moment of rage or depression or suicide or whatever it might be,
they're not going to get access to it immediately.
they can't get it right away and just immediately start pulling the trigger. So there's a lot of laws that are already on the books for these things. And my main concern is that when dictators want to take over a nation, the first thing they need to do is
take the guns away.
Take the guns away and subdue the people and make them powerless. That's what's going on in Iran, right? They don't have any guns.
Well, I mean, that's true. To your point, that is true. When the Ayatollahs, unfortunately, took over Iran, the first 48 hours post-revolution, they told people, hand over your guns or we're going to come after you. But in this country, there's a lot of checks and balances, unlike that country. There's laws here. There's courts here.
But it only takes one militant group that can come in and take over.
Anything can happen, but at the same time...
It just takes one bad Congress to be in power and then them try to change all the laws.
Absolutely. There's always that possibility, but at the same time... I think people in this country, both Democrat and Republican, because I have many friends who are gun owners, okay? And many of my friends are legitimate gun owners, responsible gun owners. They keep their shit locked up. They keep their ammunition locked up. They're good to go. But I think long term, kind of like what Japan does, right? I think it would be wise that once a year or twice a year or whatever, it's good to check on somebody who owns a gun, see how they're doing or that kind of shit, like a mental health check once a year, you know? When you want to get something like relicensed or you need to get something, you know, re-signed or whatever, it'll be good to get a mental health kind of checkup, you know, with a licensed person, like a therapist or whatever, and be like, how are things going in your life? Everything okay? Everything hunky-dory? Like, you know, it's good to check up on somebody because you never know. And that goes for anybody. That's not just somebody who owns a gun. It goes for anybody. I think in this country, the bigger problem is not just a gun issue. It's a mental health problem. That's the fucking issue. That's the problem.
I think you're underestimating how fragile democracy is and how fragile freedom actually is. The standard throughout human history has always been a single power dictatorship, monarch, a king rises to the power and takes over. Even if you look at like ancient Rome, like from back in the day, it was a democracy, a republic for a very short time of its empire days. Right. And then the emperor took over and he became all powerful. Yeah, there was a senate, but it was kind of his rubber stamp to go through. And, you know, ancient Greece is only the other example. Athens was a democracy, but it was not an equal democracy. All the people were not equal underneath the Constitution. But there was the elite class, and the elite class had voting rights. There were slaves, there were serfs, there were like many levels to their hierarchies that they had. The Spartans were the same kind of way, where they had a slave class and then the Spartan elite class as well. Yeah. And so those were the only real examples of democracy, and they were not equals. They were not, just living in the nation didn't automatically give you citizenship right. You didn't have the right to vote. But here in this country, God damn it, Siri.
Shut the fuck up, Siri. Anyways.
Why does that always happen?
Yeah, that always happens. Dude. She's listening. She's listening to the conversation. Dude, she's a government spy. Right. That's it. She's a government spy. They're listening to our conversations. There you go, cowboy. Put in that password.
It always happens like that.
Cowboy, you continue.
I was on the roll, too.
Yeah, you were on a roll, dude. But
my point, though, is, you know, democracy and the republic that we have, where everyone is a citizen under our law. We are all equal. We all have freedom of religion. We all have the freedom to vote. Women have equal rights as men. Right. This nation is the first nation that put forward that experiment. And
it worked.
And it's worked for a couple hundred years.
And it's still going to work.
Which is about the amount of time that a republic, a democracy has lasted throughout human history. The few times that it has been experimented, it has gone through that amount of time. And we're seeing the rise of dictatorships around the world. Venezuela's lost their freedom. You know, the Middle East, you've always say, they always have that strong leader. Israel's the only democracy in the Middle East right now. Everyone else is...
And even their democracy is at risk because of certain executive powers being shifted over to government, things like that.
Exactly. And so after the American Revolution, we provided the outline, the option for what freedom is actually going to look like around the world. And so by doing that, we were able to grow other democracies, other republics, spread freedom to the people around the world. And they've followed our example. They've changed some laws. They've done things differently. But for the last 100 years, the United States has been the world police that's guaranteeing the rights of those other nations. We're saying, hey, you better stay a democracy. We don't want you guys to get taken over. We're
going to intervene.
Yeah, and so if people get taken over or some dictators in charge or something like that, America has their back. If there's an evil revolution that's coming on, there's always America having their back. We don't just fight for our freedom; we fight for the freedom of people around the nation, around the world,
and also too, what works for us too. For our interests too.
Well, yeah, of course, that too. I mean, and I'm not saying that America's perfect and our interests have never been out of line or anything like that. There's some sketchy secret wars that we've been involved in. We've toppled some governments that have not been good. But I would say, though, America is guaranteeing the security and safety of the democracies around the world right now. And we have been for the last couple hundred of years. Well, and ever since World War I, when we started getting involved in foreign affairs. With that being said, if American was to lose our freedom and our government was to collapse, then
it's going to change. The whole world's going to change.
The whole world will go back to
chaos.
Its dictatorship model that it's had for the last hundreds of thousands of years or whatever. I mean, maybe that's too far. Who knows what defines a kingdom? But the American people owning our guns and holding our government in a Mexican standoff, if you allow me to use that phrase.
Yeah, that's fine. That's
is
correct.
Yeah.
I don't even give a shit about
the United States government is in a Mexican standoff with the rest of the world, and the United States citizens are holding the government responsible at gunpoint because the U.S. government knows that at any moment in time, the people can rise up with all of our guns and weapons and ammunitions that we have and topple that government. There's way more of us than there are of them. So they want to take the guns away from us, take the power away from us, and then they have secured their power. Because that's what every government wants to do. Every politician wants, they want more power. And
that's what it comes down to.
And so that's why I think it is much more dangerous for us to lose our guns than it is for us to have our guns in a grander scheme of things. Because the war that would come from the United States seizing its people's guns would be much more loss of life.
And to your point, here's the deal.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's not about taking the guns away, because I think the bigger issue in this country is with regard to gun violence is the mental health problem.
And I completely agree with you.
That's the number one thing.
Absolutely.
And me personally, I'm not saying take all the guns away, but if somebody has a problem that's committed a crime, and I've said this a few times during the podcast today, somebody's committed a violent act, some sort of crime that is a danger to somebody else, and they are not mentally stable, their guns have to be taken away through laws.
Yeah.
And through search warrants and things like that. It has to be taken away. And their ammunition. They've lost that privilege. Okay? And if they need to be institutionalized, we have to reinvest in mental health. We have to get these institutions back up and running. I'm not saying throw some person in a hole. It has to be a legitimate place, kind of like a rehab institution.
Yeah.
But like they need to get the medication up and running to get these people stable. They have to get the right therapies. They have to do evaluations on them to see what is going on in their brain that is causing them to do this. The other thing is we have to have common sense gun laws, stricter background checks. And unfortunately, some of these guns that are in the possessions of the people, I'm not talking about handguns or pistols or shotguns or things like that. I'm talking about M16 high-powered rifles and things like that should not be in the hands of the general public. That is a weapon of war and should be in the hands of the police and the military and things of that nature.
Most gun deaths are from pistols and handguns, though.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, in these mass shootings, like this guy had a high-powered rifle. He took down a lot of people very quickly. And you can do that with a handgun and a pistol, too. But at the same time, certain amount of weapons should not be so accessible to the public.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying take all the guns away. I'm not saying shut the guns down. You have 48 hours. We're going to come after you. I'm not saying that because you can't do that.
You sound like Justin Trudeau like 10 years ago, but yeah.
No, I'm not. And I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is it has to make sense. It has to make sense because we have to avoid these tragedies. This is becoming a national embarrassment. It's becoming a world embarrassment. Every fucking week we got some problem. Every year we have elementary schools that get shot up and kids dying because somebody was easily walking through. And by the way, why are these places so fucking open? Yeah. I'm okay with, some of our defense budget for our military, throw that into domestic defense and start making these schools more protected. Bulletproof glass, doors that are much stronger, steel doors, massive barriers like big fences, high walls, codes to get into the school. They're just so fucking wide open. Anybody can come in there.
Yeah.
This is disgusting.
Well, I mean, I think just, having a...
even an armed person on campus.
Exactly. Like
I'm okay with that.
Retired military,
retired military,
veteran,
retired police,
yeah.
Retired security who's been mentally checked, who's been vetted, who's gone through all the instructor stuff with guns, all the safety procedures. I'm okay with armed people on campus.
Yep. And his sole job is just to protect those children.
Protect the children. I'm okay with that. And then all the liberal parents will say, oh, I'm scared because... I am so happy if we have an armed person on a campus protecting our children, K through 12.
Yeah.
Multiple people protecting our children
so
we can deter future attacks. But we have to fortify these places of interest, schools, colleges, educational institutions, places of interest, tourism sites. Like, they're just too wide open. They're too wide open. But at the same time, one of the things that you and I disagree on, certain guns should not be in the hands of the general public, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'd like you to define, not right now, but...
on the next episode.
Yeah, but define the features of a gun that you think should be illegal. Because I think that's... a lot of people get confused because the difference between an assault rifle and a hunting rifle are not properly defined. And a lot of features that are on a quote-unquote hunting rifle are already available on are the same as an assault rifle. So that's the thing is, like, not many people know the difference between a hunting rifle and an assault rifle because there's not a lot of difference. One just looks scarier and more tactical. The other one is more of like, oh, it's got a wooden stock versus...
yeah, but it doesn't matter.
It
either or could be deadly, but at the end of the day, nobody should have a weapon that's a high capacity that could fire off stuff like that. No one should have that ability.
Yeah.
That's just my personal opinion. But again, my main thing is the mental health aspect in this gun debate, is the mental health side. And the mental health side never gets talked about.
Yep.
It never gets talked about.
Well, and that's the thing is everyone's trying to get the Band-Aid solution to a grander problem. And, taking the guns away is the Band-Aid solution. But like you've said, the deeper issue is the mental health. Why would someone want to do this in the first place?
They're not right.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make any sense at all. And the other thing,
right.
and we're running low on time, but I would say that the other thing that we're all missing out on is the influence of religion, and in trying, like, if I, pray that there's a hell and that these sons of bitches are burning in the lowest corner of it. And I think that if that belief were to come back, if faith and trust and God would come back into this world, then I think people's mental health would improve. But I also think fear of a just God is a preventative measure to stop these things from happening.
Oh, I mean, I think
internal damnation for something like that is something no one should ever risk.
And to kind of wrap up the segment, Cowboy, I firmly believe in a faith and some sort of religion is good for people. Because honestly, we need to get back to the core values, family values, loving one another, having respect for each other, because society is going down the toilet as we speak. And I think this country as a whole is going down the toilet for many different reasons.
Oh, yeah.
But
we haven't touched on the economy yet, but yeah.
But I think that we are definitely going away from society because, I mean, growing up as kids in the 90s, we had these things, but there were much less. Now there are more and more. And I think that we as a society are collapsing. And we're on the verge of collapse because of different social issues, stressors, the family value, the core nuclear family is disappearing in America. And I think there's a lot of deep-rooted issues that don't get talked about by the media. And that's the main discussion to have. Because you can have all those things and people can have, all the guns they want, and they're not going to do something like this. But there's deeper issues, deeper rooted problems, and things like that. It's a complex issue with multiple problems within it.
There's a ton of stuff going on. The society is totally in flux right now.
Innocent people are dying for no reason.
He really is, yeah. And with that, I mean, our thoughts and prayers go out to the families and the victims of the people in Maine. It's completely senseless, and
I don't even know what to say.
our prayers are with you.
Yeah. Take care, folks.
Cheers.